All right, welcome guys to episode 4 of The Flame. I'm your host, Jeremy, aka He Culture. I'm here with my co-owner, Adonis, Sahil, DeAndre, and a special guest, as promised, the one, the only, Jason Jackson. Jax, what's up, buddy?
Woo! Gentlemen, first of all, thank you for having me. I apologize for the delay. First of all, Central Time. Hello. So that was real. Had to nail that down. And I feel like I've been on the road for a month, so I'm a little disoriented. The heat of done a nice job of with this particular trip, this Atlanta, Boston twice, and Memphis trip of guaranteeing that it won't be a losing trip. But now will it have the delicious feeling of 3-1?
Yes.
That's entirely up to the Detroit Pistons tonight. Whereabouts?
Yep. All right, so right now the Heat are currently 11 and 12, and we sit right now at the 9th seed. It was a pretty rocky start for us, with Butler just returning. How do you guys see our offense shaping up now for tomorrow's game, especially?
All right, let's address Rocky's start. Let's
Yes.
do that, and then
Yes.
I'll get into the offense. This was the weirdest beginning to my 19 seasons from what was anticipated coming in, right? So you're coming off of Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals. Everyone, for the most part, except for PJ, is a part of the return with some other pieces that are evolving and developing in that space. And then you find that a lot of these development players are going to end up having to be a part of the forefront because of the dreaded, unexpected thing that all teams are trying to sidestep, which is injury. And so what we found in the beginning of this season, which is not unique to this season, is that in the first quarter of the accumulation of this journey, right, of 82 games, is that the teams that were most healthy and most present with the majority of their pieces, sans Milwaukee, we can come back to that in a second, all find themselves in the spots where they should be, if not beyond. And then those teams that weren't, there were still a handful, or the teams that were in the other positions, a handful of them, and I felt the Miami Heat was in this category, didn't belong there. And that's because of what we're talking about, is that, through these first 24, 25 games, it's, man, at what point is Coach Spoelstra going to have the rotation that he had been working on since, coaches' retreats, after summer league and before training camp? And it's, I don't even know if we can say it still arrived, right? I don't think there was any real anticipation that we'd be waiting this long, or that we'd be waiting at all for Victor, or that the impingement for this ankle for Yurtseven. And some people on the outside might not recognize the importance of that, but I my gut feeling was that Victor was going to be what he was for this team, if not more, from last season. And then Yurtseven was going to put himself in a position. I don't know if he was going to put himself right in front of Dedmon, but there was going to be something there in that 4-5 space that was going to evolve that included Yurtseven and Bam on the floor at the same time. So that was a very long opening answer that didn't even touch your real question. And I apologize for that, Jeremy, but
All good.
I wanted to get those thoughts out. On the offense, I'm going to hit you like Jimmy would if he were here. Ain't nobody worried about the offense. the success and or knock on wood that it's not even a part of the conversation. But let's do it this way. The night in, night out success or failure of this team is defensive oriented, period.
Yeah.
Period. And this is not a standard year of defense, and I don't think it's going to be throughout. The heavy reliance on zone had a lot to do with Jimmy being out. The way that he defends allows you to do other things on the floor. And for anybody that had anything or a lot to say, and particularly in you all space about how much zone was being played, I think too little credit was given to the coaching staff about let's just go to something that will sustain us, right? And it wasn't, I don't think, the very best defense for someone like Bam. So even Bam has to like sacrifice what he does best so that there aren't these insane, pockets of the floor, except, obviously game 1 against Boston. Really couldn't miss. I guess game 2, but game 1 of this series that we just finished with them, where they didn't miss anything all night. Oh my God, that game. So I like what this offense can be if we can push control. I'm an Apple guy. Push control C and then control V on that box score that we just saw the other night. If that, and I will sacrifice bench, and I don't tell Gabe or Max I said this. I will sacrifice bench or Duncan. Duncan can be a part of it. D, I apologize. But any Heat reserve, because I would take that offensive approach that we saw from the first 5 every night, all night, and on the rare occasion twice at night. To have the type of ball movement, sharing, decision making, and then ultimately success that we saw from those 5 guys. Man, give me that.
Man, I'm telling you.
So sorry, one more thing. Speaking of the first 5, Bam and Caleb, their game has been stepping up big time with our whole team going through health injuries, problems. How do you see? Do you see Bam and Caleb consistently doing this all season for us, especially Caleb?
I think Caleb, it's going to probably fluctuate for him, and I think that's what's great about where he finds himself in this role, is that if called upon, he's already showed us he can consistently put together nights of 20 points or more. I just don't know if that's his job. No, I do know. It's not his job necessarily to do that when you have the first 4. And I don't even know if Kyle walked in here, he'd probably say that's not essential for him either. But when you get it, like you'll take it. So maybe that's where that pocket moves from just a accumulation of scoring. That if you can get any of the team to be the 4th guy, anybody can sign up to be the 4th guy to provide some consistent offense, and maybe the inconsistency is that it's moving around and other guys find themselves in that spot. But for Bam, I think it's a little bit different. I think, first of all, he told us, and we just had to listen, that he was ready for an offensive load when he was talking to us about, getting up, 18 shots a night. And whenever he's done that recently, it has reaped wonderful benefits. I don't know if that's necessary every single night. I just know that anything under the circle above the restricted area, it's time. Everybody else can get back on defense. That's the level of success we're seeing from it. Like, he gets every bounce, right? He's fading, move, counter move, step back, side step, fade. I don't even know what's left. I've just said everything that's possible in basketball. I want him to come down the floor now, get to the free throw line, and just bounce one in. See if it'll go in. Because he just has the touch right now is immaculate. And it's not, I think everyone trusts him to do and be more offensively. It's just he has so many other things to do on offense that sometimes that can get lost when everybody's in the full mechanism. But we saw, in that second game against Boston in this series to wrap up the week, that all things can happen at the same time, right? Like, Jimmy can still be the superstar that people just want to deny outside of Heat Nation. And everyone else can eat still, right? Think about those shots. Those into regulation. And I was a little early, I'll be honest, on my call. I had that game over, right? So, but I think I should be forgiven on 35 feet from the right wing off the glass, right?
That was just insane.
Exactly. I should be forgiven for
That was
shutting down
ridiculous.
the guard.
It always happens against us. It always
Yeah.
happens.
But
Either
thank
it's
goodness-
Kyle Lowry from
Right?
half court.
Yeah, but thank goodness for overtime and closing time, and
Yes.
Jimmy again, just like I will switch, and it's almost as if there's this demon mode in his mind of thinking back to Game 7 and seeing Horford in that drop defense.
Oh
He's
my
like, give
God.
me more Horford. If you give me that, I will give you a bucket more than not. Right?
Oh my God.
All right, so can I point out one thing? So the first thing that you said, like the weirdest like part of the season to start the season off, the Nets, the Lakers, us, Warriors, all started off the season terrible.
Yeah,
Which is
I call it
something
weird, Adonis. I just call it weird. It was weird.
Which is something I've never seen like all these top teams do when they start off a season.
Right.
And normally, and more especially us, because we don't have no new guys.
Right.
Our only new guy is our rookie, Jokic. And
the champs don't have any real new people in the mix.
Oh,
right?
Warriors either.
Yeah.
Warriors either.
Yeah.
Warriors
Right.
either.
Right.
So us too shouldn't have gotten off to the start that we did, but I think injuries played a really big part in that.
Yeah.
And I think now that getting Jimmy back, especially, that it opens up the offense way more, and then it allows everybody else to eat, especially
Adonis,
Bam
I'm
and
gonna
Tyler.
stop you only because you know what we talk about around here, man. We ain't worried about $120 is available every night. Every night. Can we keep the other team to 119 or less? Right. And that's going to be the difference. It's always going to be the difference. I will tip my cap to Boston on Wednesday night. They made everything.
Yeah.
They made everything.
A
They
little
were,
too
beating,
everything.
they were beating the bad boys of Detroit days with that stuff. But more than not, if this iteration of the Miami Heat finds itself in trouble, it'll be a rare night that it's offensive. I mean, in my opinion, that's my humble opinion.
All right, so since Tyler Hero's been back from his injury, he's been playing, like a superhero for us. Do you see Hero becoming an all-star player this season?
Oh wow, it's interesting. I haven't even thought about that.
Maybe it's time.
He has shown. It's funny. I always call BS on players when they say that. I haven't thought about that. But no, literally, I haven't. Only because I'm so focused on this team getting back to 500 and over it, so it's an easier conversation to have multiple guys in the mix, right?
Right.
We're getting to that point. We're teetering in that area where the I'll say the fan vote will push back on Jimmy because of time missed. Bam, I think, has enough cachet built where he's going to be among the top handful of front court players. It depends on how the fans are viewing other performances. Those two guys, I think, have enough cachet with the player vote and the coach vote that they're always going to be up near the top as it pertains to reserve. Tyler, I don't know if his breakthrough will be with the fans or the coaches, but his breakthrough's coming. And now that he's in the first 5, that's obviously where that comes from first, which I thought was nuts. I thought he had an all-star season last year.
Exactly.
I really do, but I think it's challenging for fans. I think in other players, maybe not for coaches, to vote for guys that are not in their team's first 5. But he was clearly a 6th starter. It's just not legal to start 6 people, and so you have to have a guy who's at the top of the heap in that second group, and there's just such right. It was, as you look at things last year, it was Tyler, Clarkson, and Poole. But Poole played a lot in the first 5, so we might even have to take him out of the mix because of how much he played out of the starting lineup last year. So it was really those 2 and then everybody else. And so graduating Tyler into the first 5, is he going to have to get closer to where he was last year, 20 a night, to have his breakthrough? That's probably the case. It's probably hard to get there between now and January, just because it's a short runway of voting. Right, voting will start around Christmas week, and then 4 weeks of it. So, 2 things are going to have to happen from now to Christmas, and then continue in that 4-week space. We're going to have to win a lot of games, And Tyler's going to have a lot of highlights. And unfortunately, that's the combination for the fan vote. I'm curious. I'm looking forward to seeing where the coaches are on Tyler Hero once we see those votes in late January.
Can I chime in real quick about that? I honestly, because it kind of bugs me sometimes when we talk about all-star conversations and the Heat really don't get their fair shake in that. I don't think, our players aren't really the guys that are shooting these deep threes, crossing people up, jumping out the gym. Like we don't have those highlight kind of stars like that. We don't have the Steph Currys and the fancy players and all that. We're kind of grit and grind. And especially when Tyler's scoring 21 points last year, didn't really even get in the conversation about that. And then he got this big contract. I think the expectations are even higher out of him. So the general public thinks even more. So he probably needs another 3-4 points on his average to even be talked about that situation. And now he's a starter. And we've seen him become much more of a playmaker in the last few games where he's getting 9-10 assists a game. And we know that Bam wants more shots too. So I just don't know if the share is there for him to get even a hint of the spotlight from the national NBA because of all these different circumstances. I think it's unfair. I think all three of them deserve to be all-stars, but I just don't think it'll turn out that way. If I'm being honest.
I will co-sign that and take even deeper beyond the general public. And I had one of my favorite people who run basketball operations for another team come at me hot because of what we spent on Tyler. And I'm like, first of all, what do you care? What other people, but it makes their job harder to go to their ownership to get that type of money for that type of player. And they have those players coming up on this unnamed team that I'm refusing to name. And so it was everybody's thought, even people who I thought should know better. And I'm like looking around going, what did you all miss about this cat's growth in 3 years that doesn't make you think that this is going to be that? And then here's the other thing I challenge with. Wait until we see where the cap is in 2 years. In 4 years, this thing will look like, and I hate to talk about big money this way, but you always have to speak about it within the context of where it lives. It's going to be middle of the pack, which is nuts when you think about it.
Oh, yeah.
But that's where it's headed. And so Tyler's not worth half the money of John Morant. Half?
At least, I think.
At least. I was just saying, hold on.
Ja got that super, right? He got the super joint, the super duper.
Yeah.
Which is, am I doing the math right? Isn't it double what Tyler got? I mean,
something like that. Yeah. Pretty much.
And if he gets all NBA and all the other stuff, like it goes into a whole nother stratosphere. So listen, I've never been concerned about the Arisons' commitment to excellence since 1995. And while some signings are better than others since 1995, most of them have been all right. Like, that's the thing. Like, if you look at this in the totality of the Riley-led era, that, there's some that you got,
Are we talking about 2016?
I was just going to say that.
Here's the thing. I don't count other people's money. But the hits over the years outweigh anything that you go, oh man, we could have done something different there.
I mean, I don't mind it. Like in the past years when Wade left, in those years, I don't mind it because we always compete. We never rebuild.
Exactly.
So I think for that time, like us being 10th, 9th seed, battling it out with Philly in 2018.
Man, that pushback. Come on, man. We were absolutely out of anybody's consciousness at the middle of the season. And I don't even remember what it was.
Second half.
The second half. What did we go? 40-2?
30-12 we went. 30-12. I remember that year exactly.
Man, it felt like 40-2. That was such a fun. Like, I think about all the great things that
Jay Ridge, Winslow,
all of these Eastern Conference championships, pushes to the 3 titles, and and the 3 that we fought for, didn't get, but just for me, it's just miraculous to think that that everything would just be perfect in that second half and make that push and end those guys, and how enjoyable of a group it was to deal with for the most part. And
We should have beat Toronto.
I'm glad you brought it up. Yeah, there's a couple Toronto games.
We should have beat Toronto that series when
Yeah.
Whiteside got injured. This back Biombo played like Will Chamberlain against us.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think
don't know.
Kyle has different feelings about that record.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
All right, so I have a quick question here.
Mhm.
So with our current starting five of Lowry, Hero, Butler, Martin, and Bam, well, Bam playing like an all-star, amazing, incredible. Do you see this lineup being our temporary lineup all season, or is Spo going to tweak some things to make things try to be better?
Look at Jeremy trying to get me fired. I don't know, man. I have no idea. Everybody healthy? I hope so, right? I think my gut feeling is Caleb's met, if not exceeded, expectations
Right.
in that spot. And you're asking a wing player to play 4 in the NBA, and each night that means something else, right? That the 4 can be the person that is the pivot for all things offensively, or it's just a flat out scorer, or it's somebody who's just bigger than hell, and he just seems to deal with it. And it's funny because it's my thing about mismatches is that mismatches go both ways, right?
Mhm.
So anytime somebody thinks that they got Martin on one end, he may have you handled on the other, particularly if you're not willing to work every second.
Mhm.
That's the one thing you got to love about Caleb's time on the floor. I don't ever feel like that there's a cotton candy moment. What I mean by that is that it tastes and looks lovely, but has no sustenance. That is, I find each of his moments on the floor with him off the ball or on it, which, by the way, can we give him credit for some
Facts.
time spent as the backup point guard every now and then, even though I know we live in this positionless world, but man, he initiated a lot of offense when
Mhm.
Gabe was not available, right?
Definitely.
He really did,
And-
yeah.
And really did an admirable job doing it. But man, when he's at his best, creating havoc defensively, and then have you? When was the last time? And we've seen some fantastic dunkers in our time in Heat Nation, but the harm and havoc that he wants to create every time he gets on the runway.
Better than Derrick Jones?
Oh,
No.
Oh.
Derek could dunk hard, but I don't think with malice in his soul.
Yeah.
I mean,
I mean,
Derrick-
there's just something I've never. You know what? There's a piece coming up. I'm gonna do a piece on this next road trip because I get a little more access
uh-huh.
to them because I don't have full hosting duties for pre and post game with Will back in the studio when we're on the road, so I'll have a little more time. So I'm going to look into doing like what is inside of you, like right. One of the great fallacies that we all have in these roles, gentlemen. I'm going to do a small master's class on gathering information. Is that we should never assume what's inside of someone. Just ask them. Oftentimes they'll tell you, and they may not say it with the words that come out of their mouth. Sometimes it's the twinkle in their eye or the way that they turn a phrase that you realize, man, this dude. He dunks with like literal disdain for the rim. So the rim owes him $74.
Every single time.
Exactly.
Not
That's
once or
Vegas hard.
twice, every time.
It's
Oh
ridiculous.
yeah.
Yeah.
We already know he can tackle based off that game against Toronto where he lifted Bruno onto
Can he
the
apologize for that
side.
now?
Yeah.
Come on. It's got a little-
Christian Cooper.
it's got a
Poor
like a
little-
man.
linebacker.
Yeah.
I mean, the Dolphins did use him today.
Yeah.
Oh my
yeah.
God.
Oh, listen to y'all. Listen, I got my own problems. I got
Right.
the
All right,
weirdest
Ja-
win as a Browns fan of my life.
all right, Jack. So speaking of trying to get you fired, hopefully not. Do you see a hopeful return soon for Depot? How's the status looking?
Listen, man, doesn't he look good? I mean, we show you probably too much on balance. He is, and you're probably seeing it in some of the workouts, right? Like
Yeah.
even a real slick clip today. Did you guys see social?
I was
Yeah,
just gonna
of
say,
course, of course.
he did that little behind the back. I was like, whoa, okay.
Yeah.
But was it behind? See, now here's what I'll challenge in that, D, is I think he came off a screen up top, right? Okay, so he's coming off the screen. Like, I got to set this the dimensions on it.
Oh
Came
yeah.
off the screen, and I think slid it in front. That's what was so slick about it, is that he bounced it down in front. We'll have to go back and look at it. You might be right with behind the back because that would make
No,
more
no.
sense.
I think that's like between his legs. I thought between legs.
First of all, it looked wonderful. Can we
Yeah.
all agree? Whatever how it all came out, we all saw the same thing, and we see the work. So here's what I've come to learn, and I think this is still the case now. Moving from Ron Culp to Jay Sable and now Wes Brown as the team's head athletic trainer, they want these deals sealed, right? They want these guys to go and stay in the lineup, right? And this is another thing. There's so much Spo stuff that's nuanced that he doesn't get enough credit for because it is nuanced. But the amount of room that he gives the medical staff, that lesser, let's not call them lesser, the different coaches would lean in, have their eyes all bugging out, like
I need you back, right? I need you back. I need you back.
They're ready, right? They're coming in here, right? And then you have that mess that you have in Charlotte right now when you got, wives, whatnot, questioning, medical decisions. That's next level, man. But I appreciate that about Spo. I'm sure the sports medicine department does as well, and that it's about, number one, the longevity of Victor's career, and then also when he gets out there to be able to sustain, getting the most strength possible.
Right.
So while the wait was challenging and long last year, wasn't it great that it was just a straight run after getting him? And then I had forgotten until we got to Atlanta that he had started game 5 when Jimmy couldn't go at home against Atlanta in the playoffs and put a 23 spot on him.
Hey,
as a starter in that game. So there's plenty of room when he's coming, and I don't know if it's this week, next week, or January, but it feels like it's soon, and I'm looking forward to. It's funny because Spo acts like he loves it, but the traffic jam is getting to be no joke. And there are going to be a bunch of dudes who were getting minutes that better get their seriousness about enjoying the success of others in full effect, because that's going to be the role.
Yeah.
And that's okay, because there was a time when the cupboard was bare, so you have to be as excited when the cupboard is full. And I think, we've already seen, and I think we'll see them back here before game time tomorrow, but it's like Kane and Smith and even Jovic, let's get you some run.
He needs minutes.
So we can keep this basketball straight,
What do you think the expectations are for Jokic this year as a rookie?
Jovic.
Yeah, that's all right. I knew who you meant. I wouldn't do that to you. I think it's changed. I think the expectation is slid, and it was only because it was necessary, right? There was already a plan in place for him to have his rotation in Sioux Falls, and it was well before now. Yeah. And we couldn't get to it because he was needed. And now what I think we experienced, when you see minutes going to Udonis instead, that's an experience decision, right? You're making a decision that's based upon time spent, and no one has more time spent than Udonis. And so it's no disrespect to young fella. It's just you're making a call that the number one team in the NBA needs to catch an L, and to do it, we're gonna do that with the guys that we know and trust the most, and that's a timeline thing that Nick will overcome. For me, I see something that I love seeing in young players, and that's vision. Pun intended. All of it was intended. That he sees the floor like a point guard, and it's fun. It's fun to watch him do it. He might get off a couple shots that most people would want him to take, only because he sees something more. And if you're teaching that out of a player rather than teaching it to them, you're in a good spot. It's so much easier to get somebody to pass less than to pass more. Mm-hmm. And so the fact that that's already a part of his DNA and operation, he's got an opportunity. But again, it's just going to be hard to crack, as long as this first 7 or 8, sometimes 9 are doing their job and doing it at a high level, and that the only thing that's not in the way, if it just remains injury is the issue, then he'll find his way. But these guys are going to get some rope to start to really work out what was the intended rotation.
Hey, Jackson, for me, I have one last question before you might have to head out soon.
No, you guys get a couple more. I was a
All
little
right, cool.
late.
Cool, awesome.
I'll give you an extra 6 minutes. This is like injury time. This is my World
All right.
Cup edition.
So here's a little tough question. So during your whole entire career working with this Heat organization, which 3 players are your favorite, and which do you miss the most?
Are we excluding D Wade? Because we already know D Wade's one of them.
Yes.
Yeah, no, we got
Yes.
No, we're not excluding him. I was going to answer the harder question first.
Okay.
The one I miss the most is Chris Bosh.
Mhm.
Chris, I think, is easy for that answer for 2 reasons. One, he didn't get to finish the way he wanted to.
Right.
Mhm.
Right,
Yeah.
that his body betrayed him. Let's just say it how it is. That when you have that type of passion, that type of skill set, and your body doesn't allow you to finish, that's a betrayal. Top 3. So now I may go off the beaten path on some of this. These are some guys that I've loved that may not be like the best Heat players ever, right? So there's 2 things. So one is, of course, Dwayne, because time spent. I'm going to leave Chris out, and I shouldn't because he fits in this space, because I want to fit some other cats in so I can talk about them.
Mhm.
Mike Miller came in the most familiar of someone who I was not familiar with. You know what I mean? Like, Mike Miller because he had been in the league and you cover him. You see him a couple times a year, or 4 times a year when he was in the East. And you just cordial. But then when he became part of the team, man, it was like almost family, and it was almost instant. And it felt so good. There was no Heat player other than the next person I'm about to say who invited me to their home more.
Oh,
Mike Miller.
Okay.
Other than Ray Allen. So Ray on a couple levels, and when this comes into Flame history, and you go back and you play Jack's top 3 Heat players of all time, this has nothing to do with any of the other guys not being fun and favorites, because the Shaqs, the LeBrons, and
Right.
Udonises, and all these people along the line, Wayne Ellington, one of my favorites.
The Golden Arm.
The Golden Arm,
they're
yeah.
all magnificent, but you asked me for the top 3, and sometimes
Mhm.
it's order. So Ray, I met in '96 when he was finishing up at UConn, because I was at ESPN, and so the distance between Storrs, Connecticut, and the central Connecticut area where I lived and worked is like the separation between Fort Lauderdale and Miami. Like, it's just not that far. And he ended up playing at our golf club a lot, and just got to know him before he got to the league. And really one of the great iconic highlights ever did on SportsCenter was the Big East Championship. Him and AI going at it in the Big East Championship, UConn versus Georgetown. None of you were alive, so
YouTube.
Yeah, go look that up.
Yeah,
and that
YouTube.
Baby Jack's voice is special, by the way. No bass in my voice in '96. But I got into the brown liquor and cigars later, so that's what it's about. So yeah, those would be the 3, and those are all just kind of personal experiences, right? Covering all but one of the greatest player in Heat history's career. I wasn't here for his rookie year. And then 2 additions, championship additions, to the team that felt like family. Those are just different. But honorable mentions. Shaquille's the reason why I have a job. When Shaquille was acquired, the television platform changed, and how we presented games. It was full halftime show, full pre and post game shows. None of that existed in the gap between when Mark Jones was on the crew about 6 years before I arrived. In those whammy days, again, you all had to be like zygotes at that time. But there was a gap of over a half decade of not having those elements. And then when the team traded for Shaquille, actually, I'll tell you all this quick story, and I'll get one more in. Is that I got a phone call from a team representative in broadcasting that something was going to change the broadcast dynamic. So internally, some people already knew what was coming. And I just thought it was Dwayne's rookie year. Like, I was like, oh, man, I saw that cat Wade watching from afar. I was in Connecticut, not working, right? I was between gigs, being way too pompous, and waiting for the next national TV gig to come through, right? And, so I get this phone call about the platform, the television platform is just going to get bigger. And I had already worked at Channel 7 in Miami. So it felt like a little too full circle too soon, right? Man, like 2-3 days later, that deal went down for Shaquille, and I see the tractor and every tractor trailer and everybody's on the steps. Man, I was back on that phone like, hit it. My bad. How about that job we were talking about the other day? I mean, I came back chasing it, man. I had to work for a while. That was July. I didn't get hired until October of 2004. But that was a life changer. This is the greatest job I've ever had and the best place to have it. And the only way I'm coming out of it is in a coroner's bag.
All right.
All right. Adonis, Sahil, D, you guys have a question for him?
Not a question, but Courtney says that the rundown's already complete, by the way. She told me to tell you.
Miami Heat broadcasting assistant, quality control coordinator of the Miami Heat audio experience, Courtney Fallon, getting a shout out in corners of the world where I don't expect her. That's right.
All right, Sahil, DeAndre.
Yeah, I mean, as someone who's worked for the Miami Heat, like the Heat are pretty blessed to have seen like some of the greatest players of all time kind of play for them. And I think right now Jimmy is kind of entering that Heat legend status. Where does this iteration of Heat teams, the Jimmy-led teams, kind of rank amongst the teams that you've seen all time? Is it, I know we've had a lot of good seasons. How does this rank amongst them?
If you start breaking it down, you got to obviously top of the list is the Big Three era.
Yeah.
I'm going to give that 04 to 07 team the next slot because they did win a championship and went to the conference finals twice. We won't worry about the Baby Bull sweep in 07. Not going to bring that up. And so this group is right behind them. And it's tough because you want to those morning Hardaway teams were something else and couldn't break through because of the greatest player of all time. But this team has been to the conference finals twice in this Jimmy Butler era. And has, obviously fought for the title once, which is one more time in each area than those Hardaway morning teams. And you look at it, right? You look at this group, and there could be 2, 3, possibly. It's too early to put it on Tyler, but there could be 4 Hall of Famers in this group, but definitely 2 and possibly 3. So it matches that time. It's just so soon, and I always fight recency bias as best I can. But the beautiful thing is the next edition of Inside the Heat coming up is the celebration of Tim Sr.'s induction into the Hall of Fame. So that'll wash over us, and people can teeter that team and this team together in the 3 spot. Can it be T3? Can we just go tied for third?
Absolutely.
All right. You guys have any more questions to ask him, or
just a quick little question?
Go for it.
Future question. So now that we have Bam and Tyler acting how they're supposed to be, just you can elaborate a little bit, but on a scale from 1 to 10, how excited are you to see this? I won't take it that far, but just like an example of a role, like how small guy, big guy, Kobe Shaq type deal. How excited are you to see that after Jimmy gets up out of here? How excited are you?
What is wrong with you? Let's not rush such things. So they remind me very much of what we've noticed over Pat Riley's reign. It's, start off with Tim and Zoe, Shaq and Dwayne, The big three was, I mean, that was opulence, so we could let it be its own thing. But Dwayne Udonis, like just these pieces that are 10, 15-year pieces is what I'm hoping for them. I hope that they have that type of longevity and footprint, and then their combination, which I assume is what you're referring to them as acting right, on the floor has been magnificent. I can only give it a 9 because I'm reserving 10 for everybody in Big Blue Nation. I mean, if you are a Kentucky Wildcat, every single night you get to tune in to Miami Heat basketball and just get drunk on what came through Lexington, if only for a minute. 27 active players in the NBA from Kentucky. Say what you will about my very good friend John Calipari, but watch your mouth. Because he puts him in the league. Puts him in the league. And listen, I know if you're a part of Kentucky, you want another run, right? You want another Final Four run. You want another run to the title. But if you're realistic, you realize this man's bringing them in and pumping them out, and it's tough to do it. I think, what was the last team? Was it the Cat team? Karl Anthony Towns squad, I think, was the last one to make a run to a title for him, or Anthony Davis, somewhere in there. It's just like there's so many of them. I can't even remember, man. It just runs together. But that connection and their ability on the offensive end to read whatever the defense misses, that it's a problem. And I just hope they keep pressing up on Tyler. I know Tyler wants him to sag a little bit so he can get that shot off. But if they just keep pressing up, man, up top, night, take a nap. There it comes on your head. I would do that thing that all the young folks do, but I don't have any hair anyway. So. I can't get wild on that right now.
All right, well, Jax, I mean, if that's all the time you have, is it?
My man, we went overtime just for you. I
appreciate that very much. So,
no doubt.
Jax, it's been a pleasure having you. Thanks for taking the time out of your day to join this incredible show. And just hope for a Heat win tomorrow to end the road trip 3-1, right?
You got it. Have me back.
Always. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Thanks,
sir.
man.
What a great guy. What a
Absolutely.
great
Absolutely. All right, so the goal was to stay up here until 7, just to recap, the Heat so far, and to go all into tomorrow, the go pregame-ish for tomorrow. So the Heat right now, we're 2-1 on this road trip, hoping to end the road trip 3-1 in Memphis tomorrow. What do you guys think the Heat should do tomorrow in Memphis to get this win?
Contain Ja Morant at all costs and contain Desmond Bane's 3-point shooting. That is how we win tomorrow's ball game.
Honestly,
is your camera on, Adonis? Your camera?
It kind of died on me right now.
All right.
So I'm gonna just
how we held 0 for 7 from 3. We keep Desmond Bane low and Ja Morant low. It's over. Because who else they got? Jaren Jackson Jr., Kyle Anderson,
No, I don't know. The center, Steve Adams, came to mind for a second.
Oh, I forgot he plays for Memphis.
Yep, Steven Adams.
He had a great game a couple games ago.
A decent game. All right, so the Heat are facing Memphis tomorrow what's the arena called again? I forgot. The arena.
It is called
Fiserv?
No, that's Bucks.
It is called, I'll tell you right now.
I don't know.
Well, anyways, the Heat are
FedEx Forum.
The FedEx Forum, thank you, God.
Yeah.
All right, so the Heat are in FedEx Forum tomorrow to end this road trip. Hopefully against Ja Morant and Desmond Bane, at 8 p.m. Eastern, only on Bally Sports Sun, I believe. The Heat are, I will tell you right now, the Heat are 11-12 and at 9th place, while the Grizzlies are 4th place but 13-9. So hopefully we finish off this road trip with a win and maybe see Depot this week sometime. I don't know about that, but hopefully we have a good start. I believe it's a 3-game homestand this week coming up, starting with Detroit on Tuesday. So, yes, it's a back-to-back Monday and Tuesday. Yippee.
Woo!
Do you guys have any thoughts on this upcoming homestand before we head out?
We should definitely take advantage of the teams that we play. To be honest, we should beat the Pistons. Beat the teams that you should beat. Is
Right.
basically how you get back on the right track.
Because we got the Clippers on Thursday, which sounds like very exciting, and then we got the Spurs on Saturday.
Those we should definitely both win, but considering
Hey,
the Heat always play
that was
down.
all sweet.
Yeah. And we
Literally,
always,
for no reason.
we
I
can
mean,
always,
the one game I'm worried about is the Clippers. Even though Paul George is not playing, I believe last time we beat the Clippers at home, but it was like another nail biter. So we'll see about that. But anyways, yes, we take it one game at a time, like we're supposed to do all season. So first off, tomorrow, Heat in Memphis, 8 p.m. I'm sorry. Tomorrow at Memphis at 8 p.m. Eastern, only on By Sports Sun. And I guess that's how we will end this amazing show tonight, guys. Thank you guys for joining. It was a beautiful Statcast. I hope we do this again really soon.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It was
good.
also behind the back pass by Victor Oladipo, by the way. I just reviewed that clip. I was just
Behind the
looking at
back?
it right now. It was a behind the back off a pick. And yeah, it looked very good. Hopefully he returns soon.
I mean, in that video, he looked
Hopefully.
ready. He looked ready.
He does look ready.
So I really cannot wait to see how he performs off the bench, knowing that he's going to have a bench role. I mean, this season, the Heat's been missing a scorer off the bench and a rebounder off the bench, in my opinion. And that could have been Yurt as a rebounder for us. And Robinson, who's not with us, but what was that?
I'll say
So-
Joseph Anissa. I was really excited to see him. He hasn't played.
Yeah, right. I mean, he's out for another 3 months or the rest of the season because of his ankle surgery.
Because of surgery, yeah. I
Yeah.
wouldn't rush him, to be honest. I'm sorry.
Absolutely
I wouldn't rush
not.
him.
Absolutely, yes,
He's
correct.
too young to rush.
Exactly. I mean, he's at home right now playing God of War, so he's fine.
Literally, he was playing Call of Duty and 2K earlier.
Yeah. I mean, he's living life right now.
He's only 24.
Exactly.
So yeah.
All right, so quick shout out to Adonis, DeAndre, Sahil, and our incredible guest, Jason Jackson, for joining. This was a week in the making, believe it or not. And our next episode, I believe, should be Thursday. We'll have another special guest I will announce later in the week. Looking forward to that one. And this is He Culture saying good night.
Peace.